The greatest illusion we carry is the certainty that we know who we are. From an early age, we are shaped by expectations, external influences, and experiences that we didn't always consciously choose. We carry a name, a culture, values, and beliefs that we often do not question. But to what extent do these layers reflect our true essence? The journey of self-discovery does not begin with ready-made answers, but with a disturbing question. Is the identity we have built truly ours, or merely a reflection of what we were taught to be? Carl Jung believed that the search for the true self was life's most essential mission. For him, living without this questioning was like remaining asleep, trapped in an automated existence, dominated by masks and conventions. Awakening does not occur abruptly. It begins when we start noticing that something does not fit. Small signs appear: persistent dissatisfaction, an inexplicable emptiness, the feeling that we are living to meet expectations that are not even our own. This discomfort is the first call to look beyond the surface. The problem is that few are willing to face this call. Most people prefer the security of routine and pre-established definitions rather than diving into the uncertainty of self-knowledge. Questioning one's own identity means giving up certainties, facing uncomfortable truths, and admitting that much of what we believe about ourselves may be wrong. This process can be painful, but it is the only path to an authentic and fulfilling life. It is not just about knowing oneself superficially, but about understanding the invisible forces that shape us. Jung warns us that the true self is not built with new masks, but revealed as we remove the layers imposed by the outside world. It takes courage to abandon what is familiar and face the unknown within oneself. Awakening to this truth does not happen all at once. It arises in moments of crisis, in periods of transition, in questions that refuse to be silenced. It is in these moments that the choice emerges: to continue on autopilot or to embark on the most challenging and liberating journey of all. Those who accept this challenge discover something surprising. The true self does not need to be created. It has always been there, waiting to be found. Every day, amazing videos like this one are released to help you on your journey. Subscribe so you won't miss any. We all have a face that we show to the world. At work, on social media, even in our closest relationships, we wear masks that allow us to navigate society without conflict. Jung called this mask the persona, the role we play to be accepted, valued, and understood. The problem arises when we forget that the persona is just a role, and we begin to believe that it defines who we truly are. The persona is born out of the need to belong. From childhood, we learn which behaviors are valued and which should be repressed. If a child notices that they receive affection when obedient and punishment when expressing anger, they learn to hide that emotion. Over time, what was once an adaptation becomes an identity. We become what others expect us to be, and with every approval received, we reinforce this illusion. But this construction comes at a price. The more we identify with the persona, the further we drift from our true self. This generates a silent internal conflict, a feeling of falseness, an inexplicable discomfort, an emotional fatigue caused by the constant need to keep the mask in place. Many identity crises arise exactly from this clash between what we show and what we truly feel. The persona in itself is not negative. It is necessary for social and professional life. The problem does not lie in using it, but in becoming its hostage. People who cling too much to the persona end up feeling empty, as if they were merely playing a role that, deep down, makes no sense for them. When this happens, the unconscious begins to react, sending signals in the form of anxiety, depression, or a deep desire for change. The first step to liberating yourself from this imprisonment is to recognize the existence of the persona and understand that it does not define your essence. You may have learned to always be strong, but that does not mean you do not have vulnerabilities. You may have been taught to please others, but that does not mean that your own desires do not matter. Separating yourself from the persona does not mean rejecting it, but rather using it consciously, without allowing it to become a prison. Those who dare to question their masks begin to feel an unexpected relief. It is like releasing a weight you have carried your whole life without even noticing. And as the persona loses its absolute dominance, a new mystery arises. If you are not just this role you play, then who are you really? If the persona represents what we show to the world, the shadow is everything we hide. Fears, repressed desires, unresolved traumas, everything we were taught to reject is pushed into the unconscious. But denying the shadow does not make it disappear. On the contrary, the more we ignore it, the more it influences our lives in subtle and often destructive ways. Jung warns us that what we avoid in ourselves ends up manifesting in others. If someone irritates us deeply for no apparent reason, there is a good chance that this person is reflecting something we deny in ourselves. This phenomenon is called projection. We judge in others what we do not want to admit in ourselves. That is why certain people evoke such intense reactions. They show us aspects of our own psyche that we prefer to keep hidden. The shadow is not composed solely of negative aspects. It also harbors unexplored talents, creative impulses, and instinctive forces that we repress throughout our lives. Many fail to express their individuality out of fear of judgment, thereby burying precious parts of themselves. The result is a feeling of frustration and incompleteness, as if something inside us were crying out to be seen. The great mistake most people make is trying to eliminate the shadow. Jung, however, taught that true growth does not come from repression, but from integration. This means recognizing and accepting the rejected aspects of our psyche, understanding that they are part of who we are. Only by doing so can we become complete human beings. But this journey is not easy. It requires courage to look within, without fear of what will be found. For many, this process begins in moments of crisis, when a destructive pattern repeats, when a repressed emotion explodes, or when life seems meaningless. These moments are not punishments, but invitations from the unconscious to finally confront what has been ignored for so long. The integration of the shadow is a liberating process. As we accept who we truly are, we free ourselves from the weight of masks and projections. Life gains a new depth, and authenticity replaces the need to please or fit in. But this is only one part of the journey. There are even deeper forces influencing our identity, invisible patterns that shape our psyche without our awareness. In the next section, we will dive into archetypes, the ancestral codes that determine much of our choices and behaviors. The idea that we are free and autonomous individuals can be comforting, but to what extent is it real? Most of what we believe to be our identity was not chosen by us. Our worldview, our fears, our ambitions, everything was shaped by external factors long before we were aware of them. Family, culture, religion, media, childhood experiences. The central question is, how many of these beliefs are truly yours? From an early age, we learn how we should behave to be accepted. We absorb rules about what is right and wrong, beautiful and ugly, valuable and disposable. These beliefs become so ingrained that over time, we no longer even question them. But Jung warns us that without this questioning, we live a borrowed life, guided by values that may have nothing to do with who we truly are. This invisible conditioning not only affects our choices, but also limits our potential. If we grow up hearing that certain careers are safe and others are risky, we may ignore natural talents in favor of a path that guarantees acceptance. If we learn that showing emotions is a sign of weakness, we might spend our entire lives repressing deep feelings. The illusion of the self is born from the unconscious repetition of these inherited beliefs. The problem is that even when we feel that something is not right, we resist change. Questioning our own truths can be frightening because it means giving up certainties. But without that questioning, we will never discover what truly makes us happy. That is why so many people live anguished, trapped in lives they did not truly choose, but accept because they never stopped deconstructing them. The first step to breaking this illusion is to learn to observe oneself without filters. Instead of merely reacting to situations, ask yourself, why do I think this way? Is this belief truly mine, or was it programmed into me? This simple exercise can reveal much about the invisible structure that governs your life. The more you investigate your beliefs, the more you realize that most of them did not come from within, but from the outside. And that is the beginning of liberation. But if our beliefs are shaped without us noticing, what else might be influencing our identity without our knowledge? The answer lies in archetypes, deep patterns that live within us and guide us in subtle and powerful ways. This is what we will explore next. Freeing oneself from imposed beliefs does not only mean questioning them, it means rebuilding oneself. For Jung, life only becomes truly meaningful when we begin the process of individuation, the path to becoming who we really are, beyond masks, beyond external expectations. It is an internal call, a force that drives us to integrate all aspects of our psyche and live authentically. However, individuation is not automatic. It is not enough to simply want to know yourself. This process requires action, as it involves facing everything we have avoided our entire lives: our weaknesses, our fears, our traumas. Often this call comes through crises, loss, failure, existential confusion. These moments are not signs that something is wrong, but rather invitations to transformation. The path of individuation is not about creating a new self, but about discovering who you already were before all the external influences. It is a process of rebuilding based on accepting the totality of being. You are not just your persona, nor are you just your shadow. You are a complex being, containing both light and darkness, reason and emotion, strength and vulnerability. Yet this process requires courage. Many give up halfway because individuation deconstructs everything that is familiar. Old certainties disappear, old patterns lose their meaning, and the world begins to feel like an unknown place. But it is precisely in this unknown that true freedom exists. Individuation does not mean becoming perfect, but becoming whole. It means living without masks, without fear of not fitting in, without the need for external validation. Those who undergo this process discover a new kind of peace, not the peace of conformity, but the peace of finally being true to themselves. But to truly understand how our psyche works, we need to look at archetypes, psychological patterns that deeply influence our choices and behaviors. Why do certain stories impact us so profoundly? What makes some people irresistibly drawn to challenges, while others seek security at all costs? The answer may lie in archetypes, universal patterns of the human psyche that influence our behaviors, desires, and even our dreams. Jung discovered that, beyond the individual mind, there is a deeper level, the collective unconscious. Within it reside primordial images, patterns that repeat across all cultures and eras. The hero who faces difficulties to achieve victory, the the sage who imparts wisdom, the villain who represents the dark side of humanity. These are examples of archetypes that not only appear in stories, but also within us. The problem is that these archetypes do not act solely in the symbolic realm. They actively influence our decisions without us noticing. People guided by the archetype of the hero, for example, feel a deep desire for overcoming challenges and self-discovery. But they can also find themselves trapped in incessant challenges, unable to rest. Meanwhile, those dominated by the shadow archetype tend to live in constant self-sabotage, being consumed by destructive patterns that seem to repeat. One of the most fascinating archetypes is that of anima and animus, the masculine and feminine forces within each of us. The anima represents the intuitive, emotional, and creative part of the male psyche, while the animus symbolizes logic, reason, and decisiveness within the female psyche. When these forces are in balance, we experience a deep sense of wholeness. When they are misaligned, they can create internal conflicts and distort the way we relate to others. Recognizing which archetypes are active within us is essential for the process of individuation. Many people spend their entire lives being guided by unconscious patterns without ever understanding where their choices and impulses come from. But once you become aware of these archetypes, you gain power over them. You can choose how you want to live, instead of merely being a reflection of invisible patterns. Yet there is an internal conflict that must be resolved for this journey to continue. Inside each of us, there is a silent war taking place. On one side is the ego, which seeks to maintain stability, protect the identity we have built, and ensure that we are socially accepted. On the other side is the self, which represents our totality, everything we truly are, including the aspects we repress and ignore. The ego wants security, while the self desires expansion. The ego fears change, while the self yearns for truth. This conflict defines much of our decisions and often prevents us from achieving wholeness. Jung saw the ego as a necessary but limited structure. It organizes our experiences, gives us a sense of identity, and allows us to function in the world. However, the ego is also the main barrier to individuation. This is because it clings to the masks we create and fiercely resists anything that threatens its vision of who we are. When we begin to question our beliefs, explore the shadow, or challenge our own patterns, the ego feels under attack. It reacts with fear, doubt, and resistance, trying to keep us trapped in what is familiar. Most people never overcome this barrier. They live identified with the ego, believing that their social identity and personal stories define who they are. When something threatens this identity, a crisis, a failure, a loss, the ego panics as it perceives its structure collapsing. It is at that moment that many people feel lost, not knowing who they really are. But Jung teaches us that this crisis is not an end, but a beginning. It is a sign that the self is calling for something greater. The problem is that the more we resist this call, the more we suffer. The ego struggles to maintain control, ignoring signals from the unconscious, repressing emotions, and denying uncomfortable truths. But this resistance comes at a price: anxiety, depression, stagnation. When we ignore the self for too long, life begins to lose its meaning. The conflict between who we are and who we try to be becomes unsustainable. The solution to this impasse is not to eliminate the ego, but to integrate it with the self. This means accepting that we are not just the persona we have built, but something much greater. It means letting go of the need for control and allowing ourselves to explore the depths of our own being. This process does not happen all at once, but with every decision we make, more consciously. With every fear faced, with every illusion undone, we move a little closer to our true self. But how can we access these deep parts of our psyche? Jung gave us a powerful key for that: dreams, symbols, and introspection. Our unconscious is never silent. Even when we believe we are in control, it is constantly sending signals about who we truly are and what we need to confront. The problem is that most people ignore these signals or do not know how to interpret them. Jung believed that dreams are one of the most direct forms of communication from the unconscious. They bring messages in the form of symbols, revealing truths that our conscious mind resists accepting. Dreams are not just random stories that happen while we sleep. They are symbolic representations of our psyche. When we do not listen to our fears, they appear as chases in dreams. When we repress a desire, it manifests in enigmatic images. When we face a major transformation, dreams of falling, death, or rebirth are common. The unconscious uses metaphors to tell us what we do not want to see directly. Besides dreams, symbols also appear in everyday life. A song that comes at just the right moment, an unexpected encounter, a pattern that repeats in different situations. For Jung, these synchronicities are indications that there is something greater guiding our journey. When we pay attention to these signs, we begin to realize that life is not just a sequence of random events, but a structured process that propels us toward growth. But understanding these messages requires a new perspective. Rational thought is not enough to decipher the unconscious. It is necessary to develop intuition. This means learning to observe our own feelings, noticing patterns, reflecting on dreams, and questioning life events with a deeper gaze. Instead of merely reacting to situations, we must ask, what is this trying to show me? Many ignore this symbolic dimension of life because it challenges traditional logic. But those who begin to pay attention discover that there is a constant dialogue happening between the conscious and the unconscious. And the more we listen, the more we understand who we truly are. Throughout this journey, we have talked about masks, shadows, archetypes, internal conflicts, and integration. But in the end, what does it really mean to find oneself? For Jung, this discovery is not a single event or a moment of sudden illumination. It is a continuous process, a series of internal deaths and rebirths that gradually bring us closer to our essence. Finding oneself is not about creating a fixed identity. On the contrary, it is about realizing that we are not a rigid being, but a constant flow in transformation. We are not limited by the past, by labels, or by the stories we were told about who we should be. We are a deep ocean of possibilities, where every choice, every experience, and every internal confrontation shapes a more authentic version of our being. But there is one crucial detail. No one can find themselves just by thinking about it. True self-knowledge comes from experience. One must live, fall, get lost, and find oneself again. One must allow oneself to feel deeply, to express oneself truthfully, and to act according to one's own discoveries. Many spend their lives waiting for the right moment to be who they truly are. They wait for validation from others, financial security, society's permission. But the truth is, the right moment never comes. There are no guarantees, no risk-free path. The only real mistake is postponing one's own authenticity out of fear of the unknown. The greatest revelation of all is that you were never lost. The you that you are searching for is already there, behind the layers of fear and conditioning. All that needs to be done is to remember. Remember your essence. Remember your strength. Remember that life truly begins when you stop hiding and finally decide to live as who you really are. And now, the choice is in your hands. Will you continue following the script written for you, or will you finally take on the role of the author of your own story?